Hi, and great to see you again. So, first and foremost, you thought that I had short hair. Well, I thought I had short hair, but actually, today I went to the saloon, and guess what? I have some short hair. That song has been in my head ever since today in the morning. And it's not too late. But sorry if you have it too right now listening to this video. Um, but actually, the reason behind that was not because I wanted shorter hair, but more so because I'm working on something behind the scenes. I will let you guys know once it's ready to be launched. I can't wait, really excited for it. But actually, thought that I visit the hair salon and just do a little bit, pretty stuff, and that's what happened. So really short, but I really like it. I have to I guess, get kind of used to it still. But feel free to share something brave that you did also, if there's something you did today. Or maybe you can also take it as an impulse for tomorrow to do something really brave. Because actually, when I went to the saloon afterwards, I had a photo shooting. So as I said, the photo shooting is for a project that I'm working on behind the scenes. And it was like a 50-50. It could go wrong, it could go really well. Um, so that's why I think that it was brave. And I. But I really like it. I think it was worth it. And now I don't have to go to the saloon for the next month or so. So that's also a nice side fact. Anyways, today I wanted to share or to talk about a topic that actually I would like to take a little bit more time to share something with you, some thoughts and some um, perceptions, I guess, that I have made in the last days and weeks. So I have prepared myself a coffee. So feel free to grab yourself a tea or a cup of coffee, and let's dive into that together. So, when we grow up as children, as small babies, um, we get a lot of traits from our parents, from our genes, and some of those things we also unconsciously learn through mirroring. When as a child we don't know what is right or what is wrong, but we see how other people in our environment react, speak, walk in certain situations. So we mirror that. And some of those traits become habits with the time. And along our adulthood, I would say, there are not only our families that play a big, huge, important role in how we grow up, but also, for example, the kindergarten or the school, if later then continuing with university or going to work, we come to the realization that sometimes we have those epiphany moments, like those big moments when we realize that some of our traits, some of the things that, some of our habits um, are not appropriate anymore. What do I mean by that? Well, if In the bubble of the school or the bubble of the family, it becomes normal. If you take the same people out of this specific setting and you put it in, for example, that child that grew up in that setting, you take that child into another setting, it quickly starts to be aware and realize that, oh well, here we talk differently, or here we we walk differently, here we behave differently. And most of the times we start to adapt. As we grow older, anyway, um, as we grow older, the process of reflecting becomes not so much aware to us. There still might be great epiphany moments that we have once in a while, um, but we start to get kind of a routine, kind of a habit in being how we are. And we learn, maybe subconsciously or consciously, to learn and to deal with the things that we have learned along the way. If they might be not fitting for one setting, we start to notice that quickly and we adjust. However, I believe that change in itself, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, is something that is uncomfortable to the brain. And more so if we feel like we need to change because it doesn't fit the setting or the surrounding. But there are actually two ways in which change can really happen, being an adult and reflecting. And those two things, I really try to keep it simple at this stage, is, I believe, basically the root of love, which, if you think about it, whenever you have a passion for something and you just love what you do at that moment, no matter what it is, play soccer, to sing, to draw, to write, to talk, whatever it might be for you. But if there's something that you just feel comes natural to you and you don't have to think about it, it just flows, there's love. You know, that's an indication that behind that there's love. And I'm sure you know those moments when you feel like in the flow, you know, where where the time just flies by, and it's not about the outcome, but more so the process of doing it and having this passion basically for it. So whenever we do something that we do passionately with our hearts in it, and we start to meet new people on that path who share that same passion, it becomes a lot easier for us to learn from them in a way, consciously or unconsciously. Because if I love talking, for example, as that one reason because I did that channel, and you love talking too, and we get together and we both like to talk, and maybe then even also about topics of spirituality, the probability that we will also connect on a quicker level, let's say, it's very probable, right? Because we have something in common. So the learning in that stage becomes more so something that we automatically do, not so much because we strive for the change, but more so because we're curious. Because where there's love, there's openness. You interest me, so I ask questions. And it becomes a natural thing to grow and to learn. And all of a sudden, if you look back and reflect on the past years, you can see the progress you have made. You can see the beautiful people around you. You can see maybe even different friendship groups with whom you share different passions. Maybe there's one group at work that you can really connect to, and then there might be a group of people where you can sing together. So that is one beautiful way of change. And then there's also the other way of change, which basically is the opposite of love. So whenever there is pain involved, and that pain becomes, let's call it uncomfortable, because the difference between pain and love in this circumstance, one subtle but very big thing actually, is that there are different levels to pain. So pain alone won't be the starting point for change, because as we all know, there might be things that are painful, but just a tiny little bit. And then there are things that can be really painful. So to pain, there's this barometer of, how can I put this? Of different measurements, basically. Whereas with love, we don't have that. Whenever there's love, there are no barometers to love. Either you love it or you don't, you know? So your heart is just open. When you feel being loved and loving what you do, and you're just in the process of doing something that you really enjoy, that you really love, you don't have to think about, do I love this a little bit or do I love this a lot? You just love, because love is just as it is. It's just love. Whereas with pain, it becomes more subtle. There might be some things that, as I said, might be a little bit painful. And then there are things that are really painful. So the more painful a situation, environment, a person, uh, a work job, a work setting, a family structure, the more painful it gets, the more we want to go out of this emotion. And that's when change happens. That's when we then start to get curious. Not because we love to be curious, but more so because we really want to change that situation. So we start to investigate. We talk to people. We do research on how to improve, how to basically make that bad feeling go away, that uncomfortableness. So all of that said, basically that's, like, I would say the foundation that I wanted to lay out before going deeper. So if right now you imagine that maybe a lot of you guys have been through a ton of hardships, and you have made it until here, I would just say that's a moment you can stop the video and put back, like, do this. Because only you know the path that you have gone, that you have walked, the sacrifices you have made along that way. Only you know. There might be people who have shared moments with you, but basically you're the only person who knows what it took you to get here where you are right now. And that in itself is worth to acknowledge it. And since I believe we do this too less in our daily work, routine, life in general, just for the moment, just do it right now. And I'm proud of you. And you have made it, you have made such a far, you have made it such a far, a long way. And even if you think right now that I could not know because I don't know you, well, I believe that you have done the best that you could in each and every moment. And that takes effort, that takes patience, that takes strength. And that enough, that is enough for me to know. Going back to the topic that I wanted to talk about. I have come to the realization that every once in a while, people who have grown up in dysfunctional families, and I believe that only the word dysfunction to define that would take up probably a whole video. But I guess you get my point. So whenever there's friction in a family system in whatever kind of way, and also there we have different measurements because you remember the barometer of pain. Um, Whenever that happens, we kind of get used to grow and to learn through pain. And it's not so much that we search for a painful situation in order to grow, which can also happen, but more so it becomes a habit to basically do the research. And sometimes that can happen that on an unconscious base, on an unconscious level, we do that just in order to prevent maybe even a bad situation from happening again. Which, all of that said, in itself is great. You know, going to therapy, confronting yourself with journaling, reflecting, that all of that is really great and is awesome work, shadow work even. No matter how that might look for you, it can be a great tool. Each and every step that you do during that process of learning can be a really great tool. And you're learning a lot through that process. And I feel that sometimes this process of learning can become a routine as well. We're getting so used to do the research that once we stop to do that and we just are and we just feel what we feel and we have find our voice, we have find our trust, our faith, reflection is still something that is really beautiful. And at the same time, there is kind of a pathway, because you could either say, I've come so far up until this point through reflection, through therapy, through yoga, through whatever you can think of right now, art, or, well, art doesn't fit in that context. But basically, you have done a lot of soul searching. And then there's just this tiny little moment where you just feel that you don't, it's not calling for you so much to do the research because you you now know that you don't need to prevent something bad from happening. You now are equipped with tools to not even be in a situation like that. You know how to read red flags in a relationship. You know how to detect if a person is a safe or it can be a safe place for you or not. And if you can't, because obviously in the moment where you met them the first time, you have this level of trust and you can open up knowing how to articulate what you need, and also knowing to learn the room, to read the room. Basically, you can see if a person is doing what they're saying, or if it's a person that is just talking the talk and not walking the walk. So all of those subtle and not so subtle things you have learned along the way. And I just found it really it has been there in my mind. And it wasn't like one epiphany moment, but more so the feeling of how can you as a person overcome that crossroad? Because let's face it, if that person has found their inner voice, knows the way to go to somebody else, and I'm not saying that you should listen to everybody else, that's not what I'm saying, but um, in a way, we have learned to, how can I put that? You're basically, what is happening is that you're basically admitting that you don't, it's not that you don't want to grow as a person, but the tools you have had up until this point might not be tools that are helpful to you anymore. But more so, it becomes of having it such as, like having it in your life as a routine, as a habit. You might be even identifying with it. You might maybe thought that you have this diagnose or that symptom, or, and all of a sudden you realize that it might or might not be true, but you're okay with your life as it is, and you have learned a way to deal with it. That there will be bad days for sure, that you still have shadow aspects for sure, but there's not this longing anymore, there's not this pain anymore that is making you want to change, because right now you know that change happens naturally. And just by owning that curiosity and refinding that in a way within yourself, is something that happens when you naturally become happy with your life and you become okay with yourself, no matter what the others think. And so I feel that sometimes it is very precious to notice this cross path, basically. Or is it what it's called? A cross path? Pathway? So there are basically two roads that meet each other, and you're there in the middle, right? So it's a precious gift to really be in a position to see that. And at the same time, that same system, even if it was a healthy system, even if it was a system that you have learned from highly, greatly, we can call that system therapy. We can call that system even a social worker. It could be a friend, maybe a group of people. But you just feel like you could stay there, but in a way that's not reflecting who you are today. And that system, it would try to keep you there because the same phrases, the same lessons that once you needed to learn will be the ones that would try to keep you there. So, for example, if then in that system you say, I want to do it my way, I want to go my own way, I want to experience XYZ, where I got to make the rules and I just want to try it out. That same system might question that, which is good because it's kind of a test how much you really want it, or you can take it that way if you want. I'm an Aries, so I like challenges. um, but more so, I can see that also happening in other people, in my surrounding. And whenever one person tries to get out of that system, they might come with those old things that maybe one day you needed to learn, and they will say, well, are you sure that you're not avoiding this or that feeling by going your own way? And this is very tricky, because there's truth in that. But I feel like one piece is missing. And it's the fact that it might be true for some people that they do their own thing in whatever kind of way because they want to avoid something. That can be something to look more so into it, right? But however, if this thing that you want to do, whatever that might look like for you or for your personal inner child, is something that fills you up with love, is something that you don't even think about how or what or when, you just do it. If it's something like that, how can it be bad? Well, let me rephrase that. If it's something that you love to do and you have a passion for it, and you invest in it. You're not only putting it as a goal, but you're taking the steps it takes to get to that place. It might not so much be the fact that you try to avoid something, which basically means that you do it against something, because avoiding is you don't want to confront yourself with it, right? So it's like you do that because if I do that, there will be a clash. So it's not so much against or avoiding something, but more so it's for something else. And so you're not against it, but you're for something else. And actually, the tricky part in that is when you try to articulate that doing it for something and not against something else. And you are doing that inside that old system. Which basically works through questioning, reflecting, asking yourself, maybe even sometimes doubting yourself. If that is part of that old system. But as I said, this old system is not applying to you anymore because you're not doubting yourself anymore as you were. To articulate that step from going from the old one to the new one can be tough, can be challenging. And even if you know, you can think about that. If you made it, you will prove them wrong. They will see that you've made it. But it's not so much that you do it to prove them wrong. It's to just do it because you love to do it, no matter what turns out of it. And it becomes harder and harder to basically justify this new path, this new idea, this new passion to that old system, especially if the system starts to notice that you are already one way out, one foot out. They will put an even harder pressure on you to doubt yourself more, maybe even unconsciously. I'm not saying that those structures might be bad. They just do what they do. They do what they're supposed to do. And that is help. That is to show you probably the parts that you may not be seeing, which were good at one point because you've asked for it. But right now, not so much that you're not asking for it because you might still be open for that feedback. But right now you're in a moment where you can evaluate that from your own perspective. And as we all know, your own perspective won't resonate with everyone. And especially not the system you have met when you seek help. So jumping out, taking that foot out, not only with one foot, but with two, it takes, you have to be very sure. Or maybe not so sure, because life, there's so many options. You can still find other systems, But doing this specific um, leap of faith, basically, to leave that one system behind, can be a process that can be painful. But also, here, I want to say that leaving one system is not so much painful as it is opening the new love to come in, whatever that might be for you. And of course, there are dimensions to that. If you practice guitar and now you want to practice arts, that doesn't go so deep. But whereas if you especially were used to systems of support in any kind of way, it can become really challenging to explain your move, if you want to explain that move, in a logical way. You could say, well, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to give an explanation or a justification of why you do what you do. But you and I know better. We know that, living in a society, living in a group of people that matter to us, of course, we want to make sure that they feel seen in their own special way, and we want them to know that we appreciate their support. But just as a bird who flies into those houses, where there are the nuts, and they go there, they eat the nuts as a support system for the winter, when the snow starts to melt and the birds are in a position to find food on the earth, they don't have a bad conscience about being a bird and flying freely and finding their own food. But being still in that old system can be a sign of that same possible codependency, that same attachment that has brought you to it. So instead of that system becoming a support system and supporting you up until this point where you are right now, and you start to recognize your progress, basically, if at that situation, when you start to notice that, you still stay in that system, it would then actually create what it actually has healed you from. Because you wouldn't stay because you're still seeking help, or because you wanted to show you basically you were asking people to show you the things that you don't see, because right now you see. And the things that you don't see, you know that you will get to learn them along the way. So I guess the topic of this video is that maybe this example feels a little bit drastic, but the same poison that can kill you can also cure you. It's just, it matters, the doses is mattering. So if maybe before you needed much more, a higher dose of that specific support system, and you don't need it right now as you did previously, the dose might be diminishing or reducing itself to a point where you say, well, I can now live without it. And if you still stay there, it becomes toxic. It becomes poison. because you're not sick. And to explain that, to state out in a in a in a confident way that you are healthy, that you make your own decisions, can be very threatening to a support system. And maybe also from a human perspective, they also just don't want to lose somebody that eager to be reflective. But they and you also knew it was just a matter of time until through that curiosity, through that learning, through that growing, through all that pain, and at the same time the love, you have changed. And it is okay. And it is important to change. So I guess that's what I wanted to talk about with you today. And I mentioned my hair salon as an example of being brave. I'm just imagining now, or thinking about making that step can be also something brave. Because listening to your voice, to your own voice, is always brave. Not because you're avoiding the opinions of others. You could argue that that also happens along the way, but it's not the reason why you do it. But more so because your voice is louder. And the other voices become second, third place. So I guess that's part of life too. And I feel like not only through the work, but I feel like a lot of people are kind of doing really crazy things these days, and kind of reinvent themselves and start new things, new projects, new ideas. And with some of them, when I talk to them, I could really see their inner child coming out of their eyes, and they start to shine and they just, it touches my heart to see somebody going after what their heart is wishing for, what their soul is asking them to do. And if you're one of those people, I don't have to remind you of your strength. Because you know that you have strength. But maybe being brave is the right way to put it. To be brave enough to even follow your own voice, even if You're doing it might be maybe through the lens of somebody else's eyes. And there might be parts that might resonate with you too. But if you're being brave, not so much because you're avoiding something, but more so because you're for going for this new path on your own personal way. And I believe this is real bravery. So, I hope if you have made it until this point in the video, I appreciate your time. I thank you very much for your presence with me. And I would love to hear about your stories about braveness. Braveness? About your brave hearts. Not the movie, but about the paths that your heart is guiding you to. Might be not the hair salon, but whatever it is to you. Whatever it is to you. And may your path be blessed and light. See you in the next one.